Hello, dear ones. This is Bevin. And recently I've felt really compelled to use a variety of divination tools, tarot and oracle, to sense into the collective energy that's coming up in our world right now. And I pulled a really powerful spread today that I wanted to just pop on for a few minutes and share with you, share some insight that I had. It really started to tell the story of what's happened since the coronavirus outbreak and what's next for us as humanity. So I'm really excited to share this with you, and I hope it brings you some insight. I noticed that usually people share which decks that they're using, and because people are really interested in that. So I'll share the ones that I will be pulling here for you. The first is the Dreams of Gaia Tarot. Beautiful, beautiful deck. This is the pocket size edition. And by the way, I don't receive any, I'm not an affiliate partner. I don't receive any promotions. These are just the ones that I really like for myself. And then there's the Earth Warriors Oracle. Beautiful. This is really that helps me tap into the ancestor spirits. So this is the one I love here. And then the very first deck I ever bought was the Soul Cards by Deborah Hoff Chapman. They're beautiful archetypal images. They don't have any particular interpretation. They just, each person tells their own story. And then I have the Mystical Shaman Oracle, which is really great. So, so let's get started. Let me share with you what I discovered in this process. And because I am an INFJ, and intuitive is our dominant aspect of this particular personality trait, and then feeling, and then thinking, and then sensory, it's often that I need some kind of bridge between my intuitive knowing, my intuitive sense, and the sort of logical, intellectual mind that needs to make sense of those patterns in the world. And so visual archetypes like tarot, these are sacred archetypes. And there's a lot of different ways that people make that bridge, you know, walking in nature, musical, sound vibration, movement, body movement. I do all those things. But particularly as an artist and as a designer, these images just touch my soul, and I just receive so much for that. So the first card that I wanted to share is lightning, right? Lightning. And this is really how it felt for me, and I think for a lot of us, to have this virus come into the earth. And before, it was just kind of darkness, right? We didn't know this was coming. And then, you know, all of a sudden, here it is. It's really intense. It's striking in all these different places across the planet. And you know what a lightning storm is like. You know, it's like, wow. So it sort of illuminates something in the darkness. So lightning can be destructive, but it can also be illuminating as well. And I would say that we definitely have received a great deal of illumination and a deepening of our understanding of ourselves internally as individuals, as well as our collective, as a result of this happening on our planet. And then we kind of come to this card here. Let me see if I can get it with no glare. And you see that there's a person here who seems to be kind of in the hierarchy, more in power, holding their hands over the eyes of the people below them. And to me, this symbolizes how particular governments, many governments probably, like started to realize that there was a problem, but they either didn't tell their citizens or they didn't tell each other, right? And so this is, you know, when we have come into this culture and we've seen over the past couple of years how there's been sort of this divide between those who are more interested in having particular countries and being sort of separated and in division, and those who are more interested in looking at us as a global species. And so when we have these blinders over our eyes, and even, you know, we saw a lot of people, and I continue to see people who are responding to this pandemic and this sort of global shutdown in a way that is, oh, this isn't real. I saw conspiracy theories online today, and it's all interesting, and really we all have a different way of coping with the things that come up in our lives, and so that's one way of coping. And so some people believe there's that there's like something else going on, there's some other agenda. And I'm not going to get into the conspiracy theories, and you can certainly look those up if you'd like to, but this is sort of this old school mentality, right? That this thing comes in that we weren't really prepared for. And then, immediately there's like, okay, we need to shut it down. We need to shut down information. We need to not share information. We need to pretend like our numbers aren't what they are. And then what that sort of led to was this, right? For a lot of people, including myself, here's this person, and inside their head, they're like, oh shit, am I going to have enough food? What's going to happen with my job? All of these pieces. And then if you are an empath or a highly sensitive person, like I am both of those things, you not only felt your own aspects of all of these personas inside your mind, the fear-based personas, screaming out, but you felt everyone else's as well. And so so this is kind of what happened, and then our goal was, how do we start to go within? My advice to anyone who I've been talking to in my communities, my clients, is just to be still. Like sometimes we want to feel like we need to fix it, we need to solve it. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And this is kind of what got us into this place in the first place. And I'm not saying it's because like we deserve to have the coronavirus. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that being in this fast-paced, hustle-based culture of do more, do more, do more, do more has kind of got us into this place where our daily personas kind of look like this pretty frequently. And we're not intended to be there. We're intended to be here, right? And so this is an invitation, as I spoke about in a previous video, this is an invitation to get quiet and go within your home, just be around a very few people, be reflective. This is what's happening now in our world. And then we come to this card, which I thought was really interesting, and I'll turn it this way because I think it's a little easier to see. We see two people looking at each other, right? And there's some kind of like connection in between them, but there's also this distance right here. There's this distance. And this is like the social distancing that we've had to do, like in our physical reality, we've had to be distant from each other. Even those who I'm closest to, I was going to go and fly out to see my family in a few weeks. And, I'm putting that on hold because we all need to do our part to make sure that we're not spreading it from person to person. So you see there's this little gap here, right, between the two people. And it feels really uncomfortable and it feels disconnected in some ways. So we have to do things like this, which is get online and find ways to connect virtually. And isn't it amazing that we actually have that resource, that we built that capacity to talk with anyone around the world. And I think that's really important. And then we come into this card here. This one's probably going to be a little harder to see. There we go. That's a little better. And this is the healer in this particular deck. And you can see he has what is sort of like the half of the caduceus, the medical symbol with the snake wrapped around the pole. And yet, it's a returning to more of our shamanic roots, right? Perhaps where we look at how important it is to have clean water and to get out in nature and to be in concert with, and you see a couple of frogs here, right? Frog starts out as a tadpole and then it grows into its full expression and it has its voice, and there's sacred, there's sacred markers here. Perhaps even a little reminiscent of some of the grave markers that will come with those who did not survive this disease. And this is getting into a different place around our healing. The healing is holistic, right? It's in a holistic process, and we're really understanding that as we come forward into this space. And then we come into the sweat lodge, right? So we've been through all of this emotional turmoil, the lightning, the covering up of things, the inner voices going, we're going to do the social distancing. And then we start to say, okay, what's the healing? You know, we saw people in Italy singing off of their balconies, and we see people getting released from the hospital, and there's like some hope, right? Like, so it felt like a lot of darkness. But in here is some hope. And I thought this was particularly interesting because today I read a study where they realized that the viruses can't survive past 133 degrees Fahrenheit. And so when you actually heat up the nasal passages and the respiratory system, it kills the virus. And so, you know, and of course, you know, we know that the flu is often worse in the winter. And of course, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving any medical advice here. But I just think that it's interesting that we're looking at these, what are very ancient practices that were adopted, you know, by indigenous cultures. And then my family had a sauna. You know, we had a little building when I grew up as a child, and we used to go out there. And the sweat lodge is a place that you enter into sacred space. Generally, you release all, you know, clothing and all, like you put aside everything and you enter into this space and you get quiet again and you meditate, and then you allow those impurities to release out through a natural body process of sweating. And so the sweat lodge is really about this healing process that all of the people who are ill are going through. It brings up a fever. And so this is the sweat lodge, right? We're in this process of purging and understanding, not only purging on a micro level, but on a macro level. You know, what is it that we're leaving behind when we walk into the sweat lodge, into this sacred ceremony of release? So this is a really impactful card here. And then we come to the Six of Earth. It's Six of Pentacles in the Tarot. And you see that this person has this huge yoke. The yoke is like a huge burden, right? Something they have to carry, something that they have to put on their shoulders, right? And we feel this huge responsibility, especially those who are sensitive. Like, what's going to happen to our earth? Like, do I need to do something, right? We have a bowl, so there's abundance there, there's fruit, and we have a sickle so that we can actually harvest. And yet you see, and it may be hard to see, but there's actually shackles and chains around him. So he's chained to this burden. And yet if you look very closely here, there's both a lock and a key right next to each other. And so if we just would look down, we actually, at the heart chakra, we actually have the key to unshackle ourselves from everything that we have built around this idea that money and profit needs to be the most important thing. And if we come into a space where we're in the sweat lodge and we decide, you know, I really want to set down this burden. And the six from numerology is really about harmony. It's reharmonizing. It's coming into balance, right? It's an even number. So this card reminds us that we've had the key the whole time. And now we're coming into conscious awareness of the fact that we have the key. And then we come to the Eight of Earth, the Eight of Pentacles. And this really is the balance card. It's about taking back our power. And yet you see that it's not power in the sense of, it's power in the sense of really returning somewhat to those roots, returning to a communion with the earth, with our planet. We're not using resources just arbitrarily, just so that we can have more and have more and have more. But there is a balance there. We only take what we need. And it's hard to see in this card because it's a little bit difficult. But she has, you know, basically this resource. And it's only as much as she can carry in her hand. And she has a beautiful light that's activated at the crown and the third eye, right? So this is a really powerful card. And this is the rise of the feminine. This is the rise of the feminine energy, right? And really honoring, no matter whether you're you know, by human gender, a man or woman, we all have this feminine energy within us, which is being reflective, intuitive, receiving, nurturing, birthing. You know, this is the energy that we're moving and shifting into in this new era. And that's going to require us to come into the Ten of Earth, Ten of Pentacles, right? This is often the card of satiation or fullness or completion, right? The 10 is the completion of a cycle. In order to complete that cycle, we have to take off our masks and we have to allow that light to shine. We have to be authentic with each other and seen. And we have to realize that, you know, we don't need to come into this space of exploiting the earth in order to have abundance and material wealth and material prosperity. And actually that is meant for every single human being, not just a few, right? So this is releasing that old cycle of the elitism. You know, she has a fancy costume, a fancy wrap, and really coming back into a place of deep balance and respect and honoring of our planet. And the final card I wanted to share with you is also a 10. So it's a completion of a cycle. And this is really what that looks like when we get there, right? This is beautiful, beautiful activation through the entire chakra system, a release, you know, and a tapping back in to our place in the oneness. It is a regenerative cycle, not a destructive cycle, right? Not a destructive cycle, but a regenerative cycle where everything is in balance and it's supporting the ecosystem, not taking away from it. And it really is the activation of this divine feminine within us to realize that it's time to come back into concert with our mother, right? So I was having this conversation with a friend of mine tonight, and he said something really important that I want to share with you. So there's the Hermetic principle of correspondence. Most people know it as above, so below, or as within, so without. And that we live in this holographic universe where every single pattern is reflected everywhere. We see it in nature and numerology and astrology, and relationship patterns, you know, all different patterns. The way our cells are constructed and the way the universe is constructed, it happens over and over. And so the really important piece of this conversation is that he was saying, well, it doesn't make sense that a virus would infect a person and in fact it's killing its host, the thing that it lives off of. And I said, well, it doesn't make sense that human beings would infect a planet and be killing off its host, right? So, you know, we do it in the name of survival. A virus does it in the name of survival, but it's very interesting to me to see that mirroring effect. And once we became conscious beings, right? When we moved just past our instinctual level, you know, where we can actually make choices and we can decide what we want to do, we have the opportunity to move ourselves into this part of the cycle. And this is what we're presented with right now across our planet. And I don't know about you, but this is a absolutely beautiful card. Look at the tapestry of life. Look at the full energetic activation of the aura, the healing energy coming out of the hands. I mean, this is who we're meant to be in the context of our world. And so we go from, you know, let me grab it real quick. We go from this, right, where we don't want to look at things. We just want to keep going the same way that we've always gone, you know, which leads us into this, right? A lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, heart disease, obesity, addiction, all those things, right? And yet what we see here along this path is that, you know, we're going to come into this healing place and we're going to go into the light and we're going to release and we're going to set down because this is a 54, which ends up being a 9. And that is that final step before we get to the completion of the cycle. And we've always had the key. We've always had the key. And now there's so many people who know that they have the key as a result of what's happening in our world. And when we put down the mask and we stop needing to gather all the resources just for us as individuals, and we realize that we are part of the collective, then we move into this energy here. This is such a beautiful, beautiful, hopeful space. This is what I've had a knowing of. I hope that you're feeling this too. It is very challenging. I mean, when the lightning comes in, man, that storm is rough, right? But we're meant to end up in that regenerative cycle. And we know how to do it. We already know how to do it. All we have to do is look at life around us. So I thank you, my friends, for being here tonight or tomorrow or whenever you catch this video, and connecting in, for allowing me to share my intuitive knowing and my process as I'm working to stay in this really centered and grounded place. Even though strong emotions come up or we get triggered, it's time. It's time for us to be in this balance here, right? I know she's so hard to see. That's better. It's time for us to be in this balance, to own our power, but that power comes from within, not power over. Yeah. In concert with the earth, you can see that she just blends right here down into the earth. Yeah. But she's very present in her humanness. And yet peaceful, calm. This is where we're going. I don't know about you, but I've been, manifesting this for our planet. I've been holding space for this for so long, since I was a child, probably. And I'm so excited that this is where we're going. So I invite you to enjoy this time when we get to be still. We get to go within. We're noticing all those voices surrounding us. And yet we're not getting pulled away. We're coming into our healing energy here. Right? We're taking care of our body. We're resting, drinking a nice cup of tea. Staying hydrated, doing all the things that help you to be centered and grounded and whole. There's a lot of earth energy here, right? There's a little bit of fire, but mostly earth. It's time for us to be embodied. It's time for us to reconnect. If you can go walk in nature, get some fresh air, put your feet on the ground, it's time to do that. So thank you so much for being with me. And I'll see you soon.